It's the Patrick Netherton Show, 11:30 The Tiger. He's Rogers Hampton. I'm Patrick Netherton. Hope you're doing well. Hope everything is good. And, man, we are pleased to welcome in one of our favorites, a former guest host who spent a little time here in the Port City, guest host on the Tim Brando Show back in the day. He is Bruce Feldman of Fox Sports. Got a new book out that we're going to talk about at length that folks around here are definitely going to want to check out. Bruce, first of all, are you one of the myriad sports writers who deifies Bruce Springsteen?
I am not.
Okay.
No, I did go to a concert along with my older brother and a bunch of his friends. I think when I was like 13 at Giant Stadium, which is obviously New Jersey, which is his wheelhouse.
Sure.
But there's a handful of songs I like, but I'm not one of those sports writers now who thinks he's the be all end all. And I've heard, I know every song that now.
Yeah.
I can't say that I am.
Okay. All right. Oh, look, we know there are plenty of them out there, especially the East Coast guys who basically Bruce Springsteen walks on water. There's no doubt about that. All right. So you got a new book that's coming out, Flip the Script, all about Ed Orgeron and the LSU Tigers and the lessons learned from the championship team. Yeah. Hey, Coach, you there? Yeah, we have a great Ed Orgeron drop of him saying hello to a media conference.
We're coming.
Oh, there we go.
We're coming. And we ain't backing down.
And they came and they didn't back down and they won a championship. So, Bruce, kind of give me the origin of this. How did you kind of get the idea that you wanted to do this book, and how were you able to approach the LSU folks and get the kind of access you've gotten?
Yeah, so about 13 years ago, I did a book about recruiting called Meat Market, really focused in on how a college football program goes from 1,000 names on its board at the beginning of the year to 25 they sign, and was kind of a fly on the wall around Ole Miss when Ed Orgeron was the head coach, and he was this larger-than-life, colorful character, as everybody now knows. The book did well, and so for years I would get people asking, hey, you got to do a sequel to Meat Market, and I just didn't think that I would be able to do it. I didn't think I'd find a story that would be as compelling, and just, needed to have really special access to be able to take readers somewhere where they already couldn't, find with all the other coverage that's out there. And so over the years, it just I kept in touch with Orgeron, and then about 18 months ago, he had told me this young offensive coach he brought in from the Saints, obviously that was Joe Brady, was really a remarkable addition to them. And so I went down there in April of 2019, spent a week there, went to practices, sat in meetings, and was just kind of blown away by what I thought they had there. Joe Burrow looked amazing in the offense. We saw Jamar Chase really blossoming. And I just was like, wow, you know what? Maybe they're about to take off. Now, I couldn't have predicted national title team, but I started working on a book proposal, which was basically the sequel to Meat Market, and felt like it had a real chance. And then after they beat Alabama, I was like, all right, the book is made, because I knew Orgeron's own story about the ups and the downs. He has experienced more of the highest of the highs, but definitely the lowest of the lows in his own story arc of any coach working anywhere in football. And so to be able to tell that story, I thought was going to be really impactful for people, not just diehard LSU football fans, but people who it's just a really very human story about coming to grips with your own failures and your own challenges that he's had to do now, 20 years sober, but the lessons he's learned along the way. So when I talked to him about that, it was after the SEC title game. I'd been there a week with them, went to, it was around all the meetings and everything else, and around all the practices. And after they beat Georgia the way they did, I asked him about it, and we talked about telling that story, and he was very open and honest about it. Obviously, it helped that they won a national title, so now you can tell book publishers, hey, we got a national championship coach, and it isn't just a really great story. And it really took off from there. And it was a lot I learned. I thought I knew everything there was to know about Ed's story. And there was so much more in depth that I didn't know that, that's now in Flip the Script.
Well, and interestingly, because he was a guy that went to LSU to start with as a player, didn't make it. ended up at Northwestern State, where I am. We have a very personal relationship with Coach O at NSU, and so that makes things even more personal for those of us in Northwest Louisiana. This is not just a Baton Rouge story. This is a story he kind of crisscrossed the entire state as he went through it. He coached at McNeese and then up into Arkansas and Miami and et cetera, and it went on. What was maybe something you learned that you didn't know about Ed Orgeron that even from the Meat Market time, which was a classic book, what is something that maybe you think he's learned and maybe something you learned about him?
Well, one of the things I did not know was, and we talked about the lowest of the lows. So early in his coaching career, now he goes, as you said, those steps after he's at NSU, and certainly how it helped him with Bill Johnson and John Thompson and the guys that really gave him a foundation. But so he gets on at Miami on Jimmy Johnson's staff, and things are going great. He's coaching Cortez Kennedy and Russell, Maryland, and then later Warren Sapp, and they're winning championships, and he's learning a lot. But he's also caught up in everything. And it's the fast life of Miami. He's going out, and he's partying, and he's always been a big drinker. And the drinking gets out of control, and he gets out of control. But eventually it costs him his job, and he realizes, I can't handle this. I cannot beat this on my own right now. And he eventually ends up, he tells me the story where somehow he got John Lucas's number. John Lucas, former NBA player at the treatment center in Houston. He calls the treatment center. A woman answers, and she says, and he tells the whole story. I'm a football coach. I've lost everything. I need help. And she said, sir, do you have insurance? And he says, I do not. And she says, I'm sorry, I can't help you. And then 5 minutes later, the phone rings again, and it's John Lucas. And he said, can you get here tonight? And he said, I can. His father drives him from South Lafourche all the way to Houston. And he said, I spent 45 days there in a treatment center in that program, changed his life. John Lucas never asked him for a penny for it. And that was really the foundation. And then, obviously as he gets on, he gets a volunteer job back because, the help that he had there, you talk about McNeese State, you talk about Nicholls State, those programs that, unless you're in the state of Louisiana, you probably don't know much about them. In addition to NSU, that was his foundation. And those are that was what got him a chance to get back in college football and get back doing what he loves most. Because other than that, I think he thought he had lost everything and he was never going to get another shot. And he just wanted to be back coaching again. And that was everything for him.
Talking to Bruce Feldman, the book is Flip the Script. It's all about Ed Orgeron's journey and the LSU Tigers from last year. I would imagine, Bruce, when you mentioned that, now that they became a national champion, it made the book a much easier sell. But walk me through, or kind of take me through that journey, because this ends up being arguably the greatest single season in the history of college football that LSU put together last year. What's that like as you're sort of inside, you're talking to Coach O, your assistants, that kind of thing? What's that like as that journey is on its way and you realize, this could be one of the most special teams in the history of college football?
Yeah, I think it started to get, obviously that spring I was telling you about when I was down there, they already felt like there was a foundation there, and inside they had a belief. Now outside, everybody was like, yeah, we've heard this song and dance from LSU people before, whether it was Cam Cameron was going to change the offense,
yep.
Brandon Harris was going to give them a quarterback, or then Matt Canada gets hired. Yeah, there was an eye roll from people. But, man, when I was down there that spring, you really felt something was different. And then I think it was the Texas game week 2 where it's 3rd and 17 and we're putting our foot on the gas. This is not, 4-minute offense, and let's lean on the defense and hope they can, hold it down for us again. And from that, it was, them lighting up Florida and beating, taking it to Auburn. And then eventually you saw what happened in Tuscaloosa. And it was a completely different LSU team. The way they were blowing out the Tide in the first half, right? So everything was going. It was, foot on the gas. And I think the thing that jumped out to me, Patrick, more than anything was I was on the sideline. I'd been with them the whole week for the SEC title game, and I'm on the sideline at Mercedes-Benz Stadium for SEC title game. And about an hour before kickoff, it struck me. I was like looking at these guys, and these are players mostly, and I realized this is exactly how they were at the Wednesday practice. There was like total confidence, really focused, but incredibly loose. And I spent the last 5 years as a sideline reporter, so I've been on the sideline of a lot of Ohio State games and Oklahoma games, and seen all these, really good teams right before a game, and nobody carried themselves like that LSU team did. They just had a different energy about it. And so I wasn't surprised that they blew out Georgia like that. I certainly wasn't surprised they blew out Oklahoma. And after that Oklahoma game, I remember I was walking back in the parking lot, and I thought, whoever they play, whether it's Clemson or Ohio State, they're going to beat these guys, because I realized that they had a different level of confidence, and it was like, they're not stopping Joe Burrow in this offense. It may be a 52-49 game, but this team is too good and too much on a roll, and they kept on getting better. I think the amazing thing, and I give Orgeron a lot of credit for this aspect, especially, we've seen, like the Ohio State teams under Urban Meyer, they may have been they didn't have, I guess they did have Joe Burrow, but they didn't have him starting. But
right.
So they had every bit, probably as much talent if you look at it from an NFL standpoint. But there would always be like that week where it was like a clunker against Iowa or a clunker against Purdue, and they get hammered, even though they're way more talented. With this LSU team, there was never an off Saturday. Like, he always had them dialed in and at their best on Saturday. It's like, so they blow out Georgia, they blow out Oklahoma, or they hang 50 on Texas A&M and blow them out of the building. I just think that takes a real skill to have your team that sharp and at their best every Saturday when you're talking about college football players, because it's just not so. Even the really elite teams aren't that way every week.
The only team that gave them a problem up until halftime was Northwestern State. I really just said that to make Rogers laugh. But the Demons were within 10 at halftime. And then, of course, I don't remember what happened in the second half. I blocked that all out of my mind. Hey, Bruce, I think the ultimate thing that I see in Ed Orgeron is the ability to learn and adapt. I have rarely seen a guy who is so willing to learn from, own up to his mistakes, and then correct them and adapt. You mentioned Canada. He hires Matt Canada. The fit's not right. Hey, we made a mistake. We're going in a different direction. We're going to let Ensminger do the job, and then we're bringing in Joe Brady. The ability of him from his first head coaching job at Ole Miss to USC to LSU, his ability to learn from mistakes and adapt, to me, is the most striking thing about Ed Orgeron.
I agree. And I think, look, we've both been around a lot of football coaches. Typically, they're the most stubborn-minded, strong-willed people that you come across. And they rarely are willing to make big adjustments and big changes from their comfort zone and all they've known. I think, and I've had some conversations with Orgeron, and a lot of it goes into, people can see it and flip the script in great detail, is I think because his own battle with addiction and that process, and again, like I said, 20 years sober, but it was not, as a lot of other people, not just football coaches, know, that can be a devastating challenge that you're constantly battling. And I think because of that, when he gets fired at Ole Miss, there was a lot of things he felt like he did well. And there was a lot of things he felt like he could have pointed the finger at. And his temptation would have been to do that. And he had a friend point out, hey, you need to start with you before you can try to address anything else. So I think from that, he has learned to make very tough evaluations, to be brutally honest with himself in ways that a lot of us are not willing to or comfortable to do. And because he did that, I think he was able to grow and evolve from the guy who was at Ole Miss. And then he saw the mistakes that he was Lane's right-hand man at Tennessee and then at USC. He saw those mistakes up close. So he learned from Lane's mistakes. And I think he has it. like people can make jokes about, how he sounds and this guy, and I think they underestimate him. I think one thing he's really, really savvy about is he can see the mistakes that other people are making and know himself well enough to know I can't do that. I got to find a different way to do it. So I think he's been very aware of the mistakes that Les made, at LSU. And I think so he's found ways to prevent making those kind of mistakes. And even when his own instincts may tell him to do things a certain way, I think he's like, you know what? Old me would have done that at Ole Miss, and it wouldn't have worked out the way I needed to. So I got to do it a different way. And, I think that's the part where this book can be invaluable for people who are just trying to, figure things out for themselves. And sometimes their own instincts aren't always the best things for us.
Yeah, it makes sense to be a critical self-evaluator. Hey, obviously, I got to ask you at least one question about the current state of college football before I let you go. The Big Ten, we're seeing the Wisconsin-Nebraska stuff go down. They're giving themselves no leeway for there's no bye weeks. There's no time to reschedule anything. We've already seen LSU Florida get rescheduled in the SEC. When you look at this, is this in your mind, is it, hey, I'm glad we're attempting something, even if we put a product on the field that occasionally is going to mess up or going to miss some games, that kind of thing? Are you, hey, they're going ahead for nothing? I mean, where do you kind of fall on this idea that we're having to adjust so much on the fly as we go, and with all the COVID that's running around out there in college football?
Selfishly, I'm glad that, I still enjoy the games. It's been a great diversion of a lot of, quote, I hate the expression the new normal, but that's basically what it's been like for most of 2020. And I loved that, the NBA came back and it was in a bubble, and I enjoyed the playoffs. The MLB came back, and that was great. And, obviously I'm thrilled NFL is back, and I'm really glad college football has been back. You want, obviously you hope that these things, if there's going to be certainly a lot of positive cases, it's obviously happening. You hope that they are at minimal risk. I mean, whether it's Wisconsin or wherever it is where they're having these outbreaks. So you got to keep your fingers crossed. You hear these, these stories all over the place. And by and large, a lot of the number of 18 to 22-year-olds, the risk factor is a lot lower than it is for older people and certainly for older coaches. But, it's just like right now, it feels like baseball had some rocky moments with, the Cardinals and the Marlins. And college football's 100-man rosters, and they're on college campuses. And now the weather's getting colder, so the cases are going up. And, it's certainly where Wisconsin is, the hospitalizations are going up. But you just hope that they can keep it on track because, we've already, we're 9 months into this, Patrick, or so. And you just hope that we can, make the best of what is going on. It's not to say that the pandemic doesn't exist. It's not to say you don't believe it's, real. It's by playing. It's just like, can we make the best of this and manage this as smartly as possible as people, the virus is totally unpredictable.
Yeah.
Who knows what this is going to look like 2 months from now, but they're trying, and I applaud the people who are trying to be smart about it. It takes a lot of discipline for these. It's like if you win a game in college football, you can't. It's not like it was last year where you can go celebrate with your friends and go, have party with people.
Yeah,
just it's different now. You got to be, more disciplined in everything, and it's like I credit to the players who've been able to handle this as well as they have.
Bruce Feldman, who is obviously all over the place, Fox Sports. By the way, are you at a game this weekend?
I am not. This year I am all studio with our Big Noon Kickoff group. So I am in studio. Now we will be on the road next week there's a 9 a.m. Pacific kickoff, Arizona State USC, and our Big Noon Kickoff show will be there, and I'll be there for that. But no more sideline for me for a while.
Okay. All right, so do y'all call it the Big 9 a.m. Kickoff now? You have to change the name of the show?
Yeah, I think they're going to stick with Big Noon because it's just already got the shirts printed out.
Well, sure. Also, I was remiss. I didn't mention. I know you can pick up the book on Amazon. Are you getting the e-versions out, Apple Books and all of that stuff? Are we going to see it in those versions as well?
Everything. Yeah, the easiest way is just go search for it. Search Flip the Script on Amazon, or just go to my Twitter profile, and there's a link pinned to the top of it. And it's been cool. The response has been great. I knew LSU fans would be really into it, just because I know we have behind the scenes stuff from really the last 4 years that most people have never heard before. So that part's been fun to see people, just really diving in the way they have.
Well, when I get my when I download my Apple Books version, I'm going to get you to sign my my iPad if you don't mind. We do that?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I didn't know you were such a high tech guy. You're more high tech than me, but somebody who hangs out with Tim has to be. So why not?
Yeah. Well, look, there's a reason why he knows how to text now, and unfortunately, it's because of me. So I apologize to all of his friends.
Patrick, I want to know why he has so much iPhone storage on that he can have like millions of photos in the last 50 years on there at a moment's notice.
Well, most, as you know, they're mostly photos of himself.
They're all photos of himself. No, they're all.
You are making Rogers Hampton's day.
The iron unkind.
Everybody knows. Everybody's worked with him.
Yeah.
And he's always in the middle of the photos.
Absolutely.
Expression of him.
Absolutely. You're making Rogers' day, Bruce. I just want you to know that. By the way, if you want to find Bruce on Twitter, as he mentioned, at Bruce Feldman CFB, college football, at Bruce Feldman CFB. Amazon, it will be out on the e-readers and whatnot. Flip the Script. Story about Ed Orgeron and that championship team from last year. It's going to be a heck of a read. Can't wait to get my version and get into it. Bruce, thank you so much for your time, man. Y'all have fun this weekend.
Always a pleasure, Patrick. Thank you. Thank you, Rogers.
All right. Bruce Feldman.